when it comes to nature's most indelible, most elusive secrets, how we live and why we live, we have been offered a daunting, formidable invitation to find answers to life's most startling, unsolved human puzzles. Along the way, we've made astounding accomplishments, mapping the body and its vital functions, the ability to open the body and ultimately to heal its parts, vaccinations, the discovery of the human genome, antibiotics. In the process, we've harnessed the power to draw, to stun people in and out of life. Yet we find ourselves somehow groping for ways to ensure that those incredible moments in between are savored, are valued, and are protected. Masters, not just of health, but of life. People who have captured our hearts did so in part because they sought wisdom. They showed us how moments, however small, where truths in their purest forms could be unearthed. These icons make up what the true heart of medicine and its aim to heal is all about. They also provide intriguing clues to the roadblocks that we face in improving the quality of human life. These masters, and more like them, is also what this story is about. A way for me and maybe others like me to discover vital guides. A modern tracking device, so to speak. Ways that may lead me back through time.
Time is precious. Time is precious. People's lives are precious.
Through ideas,
the mere fact that you're there, that you're holding the patient's hand,
experiences of men and women whose curiosity is boundless, insatiable.
I always thought that anything was possible.
In hopes that I will catch a glimpse of the path that they've taken to greatness, to get wisdom, and allow me to follow. Medicine's masters.
We are just human beings. We're not gods. We don't make miracles. We're not judges. We're not attorneys. We're physicians. We're human beings with certain skills to take care of illness. But at the end of the day, it's our humanity that allows us to do that.
Clinicians, researchers, teachers.
Wisdom does not come out of a computer screen.
Essentially, not letting go of the subject until you fully understand it and you're convinced in yourself that you understand it, so that there are no shortcuts.
Those who have reached the pinnacles of both understanding and revelation, how did they get there? Was it about who came before them? Endless circle of experience that connects the past.
Medicine's not an 8-to-5 job. It's a calling.
With the present and back again.
We're here to offer our heart and our soul and our mind to the benefit of our patients.
The first part of my journey, the answers I sought, illuminate apprentice-master relationships. Essential tools in the evolution of medical discovery. One revelation built on another. It remains one of medicine's greatest traditions. Finding answers, capturing wisdom, and then passing it along. We're at the University of Texas, Houston, at the Texas Medical Center, where I'm a first-year resident. It's where I begin what may end up being a lifelong journey. It's both a public hospital, a private hospital, and a medical school. A place where experience and naivete, knowledge and mistakes, all collide on any given day. Teaching hospitals are a marketplace, a trading center for knowledge. It's where would-be doctors who want to know not just something, but everything about medicine come. It's where masters and students meet, and where the master becomes the student. Where millions of questions are asked, and where answers are there for the taking. A place where wisdom and experience are handed down. One doctor at a time.
I mean, that's how all the early science was done. If you look at the original papers for so many of the diseases, they were physicians who just described things.
I believe all great people have fallen under the influence of great mentors. I think this is universal.
Dr. Brett Stephens, the Senior Associate Program Director of the university's Internal Medicine Residency Program, and my mentor, is a case in point. He gravitated to UT for reasons that bring most would-be doctors to a great teaching hospital, an opportunity to train with the masters.
There have been several major influences on my learning. I think one's Dr. Dosikin, who's been a fantastic role model for me and who I still role model myself after on a daily basis.
Dr. Stephens saw the teaching model as a place where medical care was thriving, in large part because of the fantastic breeding of information that occurs every day.
Dr. Fred, who's really challenged me and inspired me towards medical education. Dr. Orlander, who I work with on a daily basis to mentor me in academics and the education field. He's extremely accomplished. So I tell everybody that I work with that number one on my speed dial is my wife, number two is Dr. Dosikin.
He became part of a process of discovery where he could learn from great masters.
Because I always have clinical questions and scenarios that even today I still don't know how to manage, and to have him there for that advice is really amazing. And when I picture myself in a physician role, I try and model after Dr. Dosikin, just his approach to patient care, his sensitivity, his unselfishness.
Dr. Bruce Cohn's story strikes similar notes. His medical pedigree, like those of many at UT, is stellar. Princeton, Johns Hopkins, Harvard. He found his way to UT as a result of mentors. Doctors who saw in him the ability to be both a student, a doctor, and a master in the making.
Admired their abilities, what they could do, the wisdom that they had, whether it was, sometimes it's in the most surprising places.
Qualities he says have made him a real doctor source back to the moments he spent listening, absorbing experience from those he has followed.
There's a very important element in a mentor-mentee relationship that as the mentee, you really have to engage the mentor. The more you put into it in terms of asking questions, asking advice, bouncing ideas off of them, the more they give back, and you really do form a strong bond.
Dr. Herbert DuPont, himself now a master and a teacher, remembers how vast his mentor's influence was on him.
The people that I was exposed to early on, the ones that I respected the most were accomplished. They were able to understand concepts of medicine in a way that most couldn't, and they were able to publish their findings and their thoughts in the leading medical journals.
The mentor system aims at this hospital are ultimately meant for one purpose: to help patients. The support Dr. Cohn has gotten from his own masters now feeds his passion for his most vital work.
Well, I just think medicine is the most wonderfully, the most abundant slice of humanity that you can get, whether it's interacting with young people and teaching them, interacting with patients in stress, conflict, and seeing all the wonders of it. There's immense joy that you see, there's immense wisdom that you...
Dr. DuPont believes Dr. Cohn's and every other master's achievements have one and only one explanation. Dr. Drew...
It speaks to the importance of mentorship because young people don't have the vision, they don't have the perspective. And working with a gifted mentor is critical to achievement of almost anything.
Dr. Drew DuPont began circling UT from a young age. He knew full well what was on offer. His father was one of the teaching hospital's great master teachers, and he knew what a program like this could do to shape his practice and his life.
A lot of times you're assigned a mentor, and if you leave it at that, a lot of times nothing happens. Frequently we're mentors, assigned to be mentors, and we don't even realize it. So you really have to seek out your mentors, either whether they're selected, assigned to you, and obviously it's important to find mentors who are interested in things you're interested in and who are motivated to help you.
Dr. Kevin Finkel came of age, medically speaking, in the university's tough, highly demanding program. He worked under master teachers who were both legendary and infamous for their desire for excellence. It branded him for life.
Because mentoring doesn't stop when you finish medical school or residency. In fact, mentoring is even more important.
Dr. Finkel's chief mentor, Dr. Andreoli, developed a following among residents that lives with him to this day.
And he would compare chest x-rays to different forms of art, and he was a wine connoisseur, and he was a history buff, and clinically he was outstanding. And he was the kind of person that you were in fear of and in awe of. Because if you said something incorrect, you were told things like, go across the street and jump off of the professional building, here's a dime, call your mother to come pick you up, they're hanging black crepe at the house. So he had a way of humiliating you, and you still liked it. And everybody wanted to be like Dr. Andreoli.
Finkel's mentor drummed principles into him, the desire to know all that he could, the need to keep his curiosity alive. He inspired a hunger for greatness that Dr. Finkel believes would have been impossible to cultivate on his own.
So if you expect greatness out of yourself, and they see that, and you hold them to that standard, no resident likes to have it where they can't achieve whatever you expect. So if you set high standards, they'll achieve high standards, and then they'll want to follow those.
He uses all he culled, now that he has begun the process of bringing students along the same paths that he once walked.
Be passionate. Really be passionate. Be curious. Want to always know the answer.
Second, I think that it's very important to surround yourself with people that support your goals.
Dr. Milowitz has seen what can come from a teaching hospital's protective mentor traditions. She's worked as a research scientist in the university's teaching program for decades, allowing her the crucial support and the needed foundation to make essential breakthroughs in her work. Research into the connections between genetics, heredity, and heart disease.
It was the first time that a gene was identified that could cause both aneurysms, which is enlargement of the aorta, and occlusion of an artery, and leading to strokes and early onset coronary artery disease.
The tantalizing hints of great wisdom she dreamed of at the start of her career came true in part because of where she was.
That's an example of where you've contributing new knowledge that sort of changes the way we think about the genetics of vascular diseases.
Dr. Donald Maloney uses the teaching hospital's mentor-heavy culture as rocket fuel in his work of kidney disease.
I've been very fortunate to have some very excellent role models over the years who have spent some time discussing with me or providing indirectly evidence of what I should do and how I should behave. This was typically leaders in internal medicine, from Dr. Donald Selden to Dr. Tom Andreoli and others, whose passion for teaching and learning and for the truth.
That quest for great truth has driven his work and his goals, and shown him that the constant search for more knowledge, pure wisdom, can be used to its greatest potential.
Evidence-based medicine is really a term that defines an approach to clinical problems that enables one to use the best available evidence in the published literature to inform patient care. And this distinguishes from the old paradigm where the care of patients were often influenced by expert opinion or by the experience of experts like myself, and not subject to the kind of scrutiny or the kind of close questioning that evidence-based medicine demands. The flip side of that is, of course, that if there is no evidence, evidence-based medicine requires that, or enables one to acknowledge that, take care of the patient, but also to define the kinds of questions that need to be addressed in a research agenda. So evidence-based medicine is a great way of both informing current patient care and also identifying future areas of research, both in terms of good, high-quality experimental studies such as the randomized controlled clinical trial, syntheses of those studies such as in systematic reviews, or even doing good epidemiologic type of interrogation of databases, so that we're better informed about everything that relates to our care of patients.
And with that, Dr. Maloney says, the patient's quality of care rises. Dr. Philip Johnson echoes that experience. Trained as both a physician and researcher, he learned from mentors in ways that opened up diverse avenues. An expert in infectious diseases, he's both student and teacher all at once.
No, I learned from the residents, and it's a lot of fun. And the way my philosophy is when I go on rounds, I try to find things that the students, the residents don't know, and try to fill those in to the best of my ability. And I may be wrong in those, and they can challenge me on them, and that's where we all learn.
He uses both the masters and the students as tools to further his quest for answers he seeks.
In going around and talking to students and residents, there's nobody that has all the answers.
I've been a big fan of learning and essentially of knowing.
Dr. Gabriel Eisenberg, who practices internal medicine and teaches at the university, credits teaching hospitals like UT with transforming the way he thinks.
The best medicine implies the use of the brain rather than many gadgets. You know well that I got inspired by some doctors here, particularly Dr. Herbert Fred, when aligning myself into that way of practicing medicine.
Cultures like this one at UT inspire seismic leaps towards understanding more about illness, in part because
that's what a good teacher should do. It's not about just spoon-feeding you with knowledge or factoids. Factoids can be, there are people that have excellent memory of factoids. I'm not one of those. I enjoy anecdotes, and I'm more interested now in the way we think, right, rather than the knowledge we acquire.
With this approach, Eisenberg believes infinitely more ways to help patients exist.
I've been a big fan of learning and essentially of knowing when I thought that knowing was more important than understanding. Now I believe it's right the other way around.
Dr. Dosikin, master teacher at UT, is one who has a deep passion for understanding. He can always be found with a smile on his face on campus.
Choose to do what you really love, and then do that with all of your heart, do it passionately, and then whatever it is, make sure you're very good at it. That is, in fact, like I was discussing with somebody today, why would you choose a profession like this and not totally understand it? You see, because you see, when you understand the subject totally, when you come to work every morning, you're coming with, you're happy and you're coming with anticipation, because you want to deal with the problems. You see, When you don't understand it fully, you might be coming in with trepidation. You know, you ask, yeah, afraid, what if this happens or that happens? So. When I get a consult, I meet a consult, it makes me very happy. You see, I don't want to sort of slinker away because I'm not so sure. I don't get grumpy, essentially. So you need to be passionate. You need to make the most effort to understand the subject.
They're not a scribe, they're a detective.
Dr. Charles Erickson, master teacher, also the product of great master teachers himself.
It's not a matter of believing, it's a matter of being trained properly to understand that all of us went through this same thing, trying to impart that sort of thinking that I grew up with, which I think is at risk of being lost, which is necessary. So, you know, in the process of doing that, you've got to keep people on edge a little bit to say, you're not here to regurgitate a bunch of facts at me. You're here to present to me a package that will lead me to a diagnosis. Students tend to forget, because it's so comforting to manage data nowadays, that the expert clinician makes the diagnosis about 70% of the time based on the history alone.
Now master in his field, in infectious diseases, Dr. Erickson sees his role as a teacher at the university as one where he must help students understand the true nature of the job that they're being asked to do.
So, you know, sometimes I think we are buffeted by the winds and make decisions for ourselves that aren't necessarily grounded in intellectual decision making. And I see an awful lot of young doctors not sure at all what they want to do, and they really need to take advantage of those early formative years in medical school to sample the waters a little bit.
Erickson regularly drums these ideals into the heads of those who want to find meaning in medical discovery.
Medicine's not an 8-to-5 job. It's a calling. And if you don't have that sense of duty, you're going to miss out on some of the rewards of being there when your patients are going to really appreciate that you're there for them. And you're not just a banker, you know, that's prescribing the latest and greatest drug or doing the latest fancy tests that probably could have been avoided by simply talking to the patient in the first place.
It's the mentor tradition which values not just what they practice daily, but how they practice it.
Carrying through, finishing the job, unwilling to leave the hospital that day, signing over my patients to my cross-cover resident without knowing I've sort of bedded those patients down. They were in good shape for that person.
Dr. Erickson gets no argument from the other master teachers there. Dr. Frank Arnett, who spent decades as a master teacher, brought his own mentor's ideals to bear in the classroom.
So if you were needed, if your patient was sick, you were in the hospital. And you had to live in the hospital or across the street, so that you were available by phone to come running across the street at any time.
But the masters are all in lockstep on what their role as master teachers should be. Guides, listeners, sounding boards, occasional boxing partners.
It's nice if you can see patients, but at the same time, have students and residents with you. I often likened it to going to a movie by yourself. That's no fun. I prefer to have somebody with me and teach them something, and they got to examine patients with me in the room as we...
Dr. Mark Farney, another master teacher, who came through UT's residency program himself, believes that pushing past accepted norms is the key to his job as a mentor.
You can learn a lot from others by just observing them and see if you can pull out humor. Sometimes you got to know when not to use humor, because humor is not the best in every setting. So again, it's how you develop that relationship with your patient, the physician-patient relationship, and you'll know when you can use humor and when you can't. The students, I think they appreciate that because it makes them, they're in environments, especially in the beginning of the year, they don't know what they're doing, and they're in positions that are uncomfortable for them, and making them feel comfortable is what brings out their ability to present what they know in an effective manner.
He uses a variety of techniques, from humor to one-on-one mentoring, to help students achieve a sense of grounding that is vital to their growth as doctors.
Because sometimes we get so consumed with the disease process and forget about the patient. But we must be able to talk to our patients and communicate with our patients in a way that they can understand and appreciate. Because we can make all the great diagnoses and give them all the best medicines, but if they don't understand what we're doing or don't want to take it or don't understand the importance of taking it, they're not going to get better.
You know, I've realized now at this age that what drives me is the ability to create platforms so that other people can develop their careers.
Dr. Carmel Dyer is the Chief of Staff at Lyndon B. Johnson Hospital.
We have to start with self-reflection. You know, what could I be doing better? Have I served in this role the best way that I can?
She believes her own quest for excellence creates a mirror for those in the program who want to follow.
In fact, one of the things that resonates with me today is she said, you don't have to go to Calcutta. I mean, she welcomed people, she says, but she told everybody, no matter where you are in the world, look in your own neighborhood because you can make a difference, you know, 100 yards from your own home.
Dr. John Revelle, a master teacher, a pioneer in rheumatology research, believes curiosity must find its way into the daily lives of his students.
I just always had a curiosity for what I thought was meaningful and important, and I never let anybody tell me that I couldn't do what I wanted to do.
He gives so much credit to the mentor system he was raised in, the culture and traditions that it promotes, from fellow students to mentors.
It's the people you surround yourself with. And the friends I had all during my adolescence and into my adult life were of a similar mindset. And we all came from backgrounds that were less than privileged and knew that there was no safety net, that if we didn't make it happen, it wasn't going to happen. And that I had, from the other people I already mentioned, I had the guidance, and I just never stopped plugging away at it.
He instills in his students the desire to stay hungry, as he once was, and to remain that way always.
Back in the 80s, Nike had a t-shirt which just said, "There is no finish line." What that really meant was that the joy was in the race. The joy was actually, and if you've ever run a marathon, you get around 15 miles and the endorphins kick in, you'll understand what I'm saying.
Dr. Richard Smalling, a cardiologist and master teacher to UT's residents and students, those who have weathered the earlier stages of learning and are ready for larger quests, takes this ideal to heart.
Learn how to be a really good doctor. Learn how to be a doctor that you would be proud of.
He makes this idea the one to inject first into students' heads.
In my opinion, if you're going to be entrusted with somebody's life, you need to give that person the very best care that's possible. In order to do that, you have to know what the best care is.
Being almost good, for him, contradicts the basic tenets of what becoming a doctor is all about. Never settling.
When we were medical students and we did introduction to physical medicine, to physical diagnosis, and we had to go examine a patient and present the patient, Dr. Kirkendall would take our histories and physicals and say, I want you to present your patient. Give me your write-up. So we would give our write-up to Dr. Kirkendall and say, now present it. And he would read it as we presented. And so we had to know everything. We had to know, the family history. We had to know where they lived, what they did, what their social history is. Every little piece of information we had to know, no notes. And what that taught me was, if you want to know what's going on with a patient, you can't just rely on what's in your pocket.
I think many times people come through residency and say, well, I kind of like this specialty because I can control the hours pretty well, and these diseases are not too bothersome to me, and so I'm going to go into that.
Dr. Philip Orlander, Vice Chair of Medicine for Education and the Program Director of the Internal Medicine Residency Program, a master teacher, ringleader of sorts, trained in endocrinology, sees how the mentor system shapes doctors' lives in the long term.
I think, the things that you remember about your teachers are almost never what they actually said, but just, their mannerisms and the impact that they had on the people around them and on you. And so I think that many times, especially when I was starting out, trying to master a particular number of facts and somehow spill that into the student's brain was, what I thought was the role of the teacher. But in fact, I think it's much more, lighting that fire within the student that is the most important thing.
Once that bond is formed, and he sees that spark rise inside the student, then all it takes is aligning their inspiration with the program's main goal: to make doctors who serve the greater good.
We talk a lot about it, but it's very hard to maintain continuity of care as a resident. And so what you tend to see is episodic care, and therefore what tends to be most attractive is urgent care that you can make an intervention and immediately see a result. But really, when you start looking at the longer-term career, what really helps to glue people together and keep them in that specialty rather than getting burnt out and getting tired by it, is the contact with the patient over time and being able to work with patients over a long period of time. So instead of giving people very episodic care, you can follow people for 10, 20, 30 years as I've done, and I think that's what helps to glue the process together.
Shaping students' worldview, forcing students to incorporate humanity in all they do, and keeping their quest for excellence alive, falls often into the hands of Dr. Boisevin, who teaches ethics at the university.
We're turning a lot to the issue more positively of physician well-being, the issue of resilience, of finding balance in life, your social world. That training is a very tumultuous time for almost everyone. It's not just medical training. It's probably the most tumultuous period of one's life in general. Leaving family, setting up relations, maybe family, maturation into making a living. I mean, it's lots of stuff. And if you only focus on passing the boards, you're going to miss a whole lot of other things that you need to look at, or you're going to have to face that years later when it's probably more difficult.
The traditions of mentoring demand that focus be placed in these areas, looking for ways to help students earlier rather than later, creating role models of happiness that young doctors can mimic and emulate if needed. Dr. Adan Rios, clinical oncologist and specialist in AIDS research, is also a master teacher.
I'm very strong in learning the history of medicine and where things come from. Where antibodies came from, all this PCR stuff, who did that, why, what happened to that person when he did. And all these modern discoveries that we take for granted and that we almost mechanically make use of it, where does that come from? And the importance of that is that we come to terms with the fact that it comes from a dedication to the quest for knowledge, understanding, and that then after that, somehow, the rewards of the ancient oath come true. The Hippocratic Oath. If you fulfill your duty, may the gods bless you.
Dr. Rios, whose background in poverty-stricken Central America has helped shape the program's attitudes toward medicine in profound ways.
You know, I got really involved with the question, the fundamental question of do you give or you take? And giving is the answer.
In a larger context, his influences shape students' understanding of what the knowledge they accumulate is all about.
Nothing that is human is alien to me. And so I think that for physicians, that is truly very, very key, that no matter what we remember, our task is not the disease, it's the humanity of the patient.
This master teaching, ancient in practice and yet almost obsolete in modern society, is an essential, Dr. Rios feels, to making good doctors.
In there lies the secret of creating the energy to move forward in a positive sense, is the validation of those who are in front of our eyes. You validate people, you recognize people, you don't ignore them.
Dr. Rios sees how these ideals separate from those who seek out medicine for their own gratification, from those who may one day become masters of medicine themselves.
The mere fact that you have looked at us with a sense of value is something that I know that I'm speaking for Jorge too. We will always be grateful to you.
The secret to patient care is caring for the patient.
Dr. Chevis Cord Smythe is founding dean of the university's medical school program over 40 years ago.
Start off with what the central privilege in medicine is. And the central privilege is that I can go to a person and, for all intents and purposes, ask him or her any question I wish. And that person, most of the time, will answer those questions. And they will answer them because they have some faith or some belief in that the person to whom they're talking will handle them well.
His work over decades built the program that has housed all who work here, masters and teachers and students.
The second privilege is the hands-on privilege, that one can touch and feel and do a physical examination. Believe it or no, people appreciate being examined.
He believes the lifeblood of the mentor tradition that acts as the foundation for the program depends now and in the future, with masters coming full circle in all ways.
You are an idiot if you don't recognize that the exposure to the young people is a privilege. Because if one is going to be so arrogant as to assume that he has something to offer, you better damn well try to keep up.
My mother taught me discipline and to be on time. My father taught me charity.
Dr. Herbert Fred, a master, a teacher, a specialist in internal medicine, has been a master educator for over 60 years.
You know, when I was in medical school, basically all we had was a good history and a good physical, and then some simple laboratory data. But as I have observed medicine over the years, I don't think we've improved that much with all of our technology.
He has brought hundreds of would-be physicians, acting as a personal doorman to the vast body of knowledge that lies in wait. He has taught students,
patient talking with the patient, learning about the patient, not only the patient, but the patient's family, how many children they have, what are the names of their children, you know, where do they go to school, what does the husband do, all these kinds of things. You become part of your patient's existence, and the patient understands that and feels comforted by the fact that the doctor is talking with the patient, not to the patient. And it's that warm bond, that strong patient-doctor bond that cannot be substituted by a CAT scan or an MRI or anything like that.
At the age of 84, he is still on the wards to use what he knows, to share what he knows, to explore why he knows, to share what lies inside him with those students who are willing and eager to accept it.
I'm passionately devoted to my profession and to my patients. And the biggest message I can leave those who might listen to this interview is the fact that the medical profession was founded on the understanding that the doctor will serve the patient. In other words, the patient is the master and the doctor is the servant. The best teacher is yourself, and the best stimulus is your patient.